I was standing outside the venue in a tailored navy suit, tie straight, posture solid, trying to ignore the heat bouncing off the marble steps. My sister's wedding. Big day, bigger crowd, and here comes Roland Rowe, the groom's father, walking straight toward me. No handshake, no eye contact. Just that split-second glance guys like him give, the one that scans your watch, shoes, and posture, then files you under not important. He tossed his keys in my direction like I was valet and kept moving. I caught the keys midair and let them hang there for a second, just long enough to think about dropping them, but I didn't. I handed them off to the actual valet and smiled like nothing happened. See, Roland doesn't know who I am, but he thinks he does. That's what made it worse. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. For the last year, I've watched this guy chase my co-founder through Zoom calls and boardrooms, trying to buy into our software platform. He never once asked who the other founder was. Never thought to look past the guy in the blazer doing TEDx talks. Never imagined the guy doing back-end development and operations was someone worth knowing. His company runs half its logistics through the platform I co-built. And now, here we are. My sister looked incredible, by the way. Bright smile, custom gown, whole princess thing working for her. I caught her eye across the courtyard and nodded. She grinned and waved me over. But I stayed put. I wanted Roland to wonder. The ushers started corralling people into the reception hall. I walked in slow, letting the noise and bodies swallow me. Found my table, sat down, kept a straight face while everyone buzzed around. I was calm. Too calm. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Dr. Ellison, my college advisor. Weird. He never called me unless I missed something. And I hadn't. I answered, groggy. Lucian, he said. Then he hesitated. There's been an accident. I'm so sorry, but your father didn't make it. I just sat there, silent, like the words were in another language. He was supposed to be on his way down. He'd said he was bringing food. I was going to give him my extra ticket for graduation. I hung up without another word. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. Just remember the drive. 11 hours of silence. Broken only when I picked up my sister from school. 17 years old, still wearing her backpack. She slid into the passenger seat, looked at me and said, "He's really gone?" I nodded. That was all I could manage. We buried him 3 days later. Open casket, cheap suit. Whole thing felt wrong. Wrong people. Wrong setting. Like the world didn't stop the way it was supposed to. But the real nightmare started after the funeral. First came the letters, then the phone calls, then the knock at the door, debt collectors, creditors, bank notices. Turned out my dad had been drowning in loans and just never said a word. Maxed out cards, unpaid bills, liens on the shop. We lost everything within 6 weeks. The house, the car, even the rusty lawnmower he swore he'd fix one day. No mom to fall back on. She was long gone, disappeared when I was 10, and never looked back. My scholarship still covered my tuition, but that was it. No rent, no food, no shot in hell of covering college for her. That night, she curled up on the floor of our rented room, sobbing so hard she threw up. I sat there with a towel in my hand and a pit in my stomach, realizing this wasn't a temporary storm. This was the new weather. I looked around at the peeling paint, the broken blinds, the sink that never stopped dripping, and I made a choice. I was gonna handle it. I picked up 3 jobs the next week. Warehouse shifts, Uber nights, and kitchen prep at some dive bar where the cooks screamed more than they talked. I averaged maybe 4 hours of sleep a night. Lived on black coffee and 50-cent ramen. Friends stopped calling. I skipped every party, every invite. One of them said I ghosted him. I didn't have the energy to explain. My girlfriend tried to hang on. She said she understood, said we could make it work. But she didn't get it. Not really. She wanted date nights. I wanted the electric bill paid. I broke it off the same night I picked up a double shift. She cried. I didn't. There wasn't room for emotion anymore, not when rent was due and her FAFSA got denied. She'd ask, "Are we gonna be okay?" And I'd lie every time. "Yeah, we'll be fine." But I didn't believe it. I walked across that graduation stage with dead eyes and sore legs. My cap was lopsided. Gown didn't fit right. I didn't care. No one was in the crowd for me anyway. I shook the dean's hand, mumbled a thanks, and walked straight back to my shift. No party, no champagne. Just a quiet finally and a job offer from a mid-sized logistics company that paid just enough to get us a one-bedroom apartment in Modesto. She got the bed. I got the couch. We had a tiny kitchen, loud neighbors, and roaches that wouldn't die no matter what traps I bought. But it was ours. Rent was on time, lights stayed on. She signed up for community college and started taking psych classes. I worked full time, loaded trucks, filed invoices, ate whatever was cheapest. And every night I cooked dinner. Nothing fancy, mostly eggs, rice, canned stuff. I'd set the plates, she'd do homework, and for 30 minutes we felt almost normal. Weekends were for catching up, not on rest. On hours. I drove Lyft, stacked boxes at flea markets, helped a guy from Craigslist move furniture for $60 a day. Sometimes I'd squeeze in a nap. Sometimes I didn't. Out of nowhere, I signed up for an online course in Python. No clue why. Just felt like I should. Late nights became my study time. I'd sit on the floor in the kitchen while the dishwasher hummed and worked through exercises, tabs open, eyes burning. Half of it didn't make sense, but I stuck with it. Then came Felix. He was this loud, brilliant guy I barely remembered from college. He found me through LinkedIn, said he was building a back-end tool to automate supply chain reporting. His dev partner bailed, and he needed someone who could handle the ugly parts. I laughed. That's my whole life, man. We met at this grimy coffee shop near the freeway. He showed me what he had so far. It was rough, but the bones were there. I told him I'd help, but only nights. From 7 p.m. to 2 a.m., we built, always at the same table. Coffee refills, busted laptops, greasy keyboard fingers, and this wild mix of desperation and drive. 6 months in, our other co-founder quit. Said it was a waste of time. Felix looked at me across the table that night and said, "Still in?" I nodded without blinking. "Yeah, let's finish it." We kept going. No budget, no roadmap, just hustle. Then came our first real client, a regional distributor bleeding cash from manual logistics. We plugged them into our platform, watched the numbers change in real time. They cut overhead by 30% in 6 weeks. That moment, that was it. We weren't guessing anymore. We were solving problems. Felix high-fived me across a half-eaten box of fries. I didn't even smile. I just looked at the numbers again and felt this weight start to shift off my shoulders. We didn't get paid much for that first job. Barely covered server costs. But it was the proof. Proof that this thing wasn't just another dream. It worked. People needed it. I still worked my day job. Still came home and made dinner. Still folded my sister's laundry when she forgot. But something changed in the air. A current. A push forward. Felix and I built version 2. Then version 3. Started tracking bugs. Writing real documentation. Pulling in a couple of interns from his old program. I handled back-end, ops, customer requests. He handled demos, emails, pitching. We didn't say it out loud, but we both knew. This could be something. And for the first time since my dad died, I wasn't just surviving. I was building. The numbers didn't lie. Our platform worked. Word spread fast. First through small distributors, then mid-tier companies that wanted the same cost cuts. Before long, we weren't chasing clients. They were chasing us. Felix leaned into it. He thrived on the spotlight. The guy had charisma and a clean blazer, the kind of person reporters wanted to quote. He gave interviews, did podcasts, landed a TEDx talk where he compared our code to electricity in the supply chain. People ate it up. Meanwhile, I was in the background, fixing bugs at 2 a.m., answering client tickets, filing invoices, making sure the servers didn't melt down when traffic doubled overnight. We landed in a couple of tech blogs. Just short write-ups, nothing huge, but enough to spike inquiries. Suddenly, we were taking calls at every hour, fielding contracts from companies I'd only heard about in passing. And still, I clocked into my day job. 14 more months of fluorescent lights, steel-toed boots, and supervisors who thought they were drill sergeants. I'd come home reeking of sweat and warehouse dust, shower quick, and dive into code until sunrise. It was hell, but it paid off. My sister walked across her own stage in that same window, community college diploma in hand, smiling wider than I'd seen in years. I sat in the back row and clapped like a madman. Then I drove us home and paid off the last of Dad's debts that night. Credit cards, the lien on the shop, even that final hospital bill with his name on it. For the first time since he died, we weren't in the red. We had insurance, real appliances that didn't break down every 6 months, money that stretched beyond the 20th of the month. That kind of stability tasted better than any celebration dinner. One of our biggest clients back then, Roland Rowe. The man ran a logistics empire and funneled half his operations through our software, signed every check, pushed every integration, bragged about how efficient his company was getting. He thought Felix built it all. He tried to buy us out more than once, sent offers that sounded impressive, at least to people who didn't know what we were holding. Felix would call me after those meetings, read the numbers out loud, then laugh. "You want to sell?" he'd ask. Not to him, I always said, because Roland never knew I was there. He never asked who handled the back end, never cared to find out. And I wasn't about to tell him. I'd already learned the hard way. Sometimes being invisible isn't a weakness. It's leverage. Let them underestimate you. Let them dismiss you. By the time they figure out what you're worth, you've already moved 10 steps ahead. It was around 10 p.m., and I was eating cold pasta straight out of the container when my phone buzzed. My sister's name lit up the screen. "Hey," I answered, mouth half full. She didn't say hi. Just blurted, "I'm getting married." I froze, fork in midair. "To who?" "Damien," she said, breathless. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. I set the food down and leaned back on the couch. "You serious?" "Yeah, he asked last night." I said yes. "Okay." I rubbed my face. "Set up dinner. I want to meet him." We picked a Friday. I cleaned the apartment like someone was coming to inspect it for resale. Made sure the lighting was decent. Wore something that said, "I'm not here to intimidate you, but I absolutely will if I need to." He showed up right on time. Clean haircut, button-down shirt. Brought wine like we were in a movie. He smiled a little too wide, like he'd practiced it in the car. Dinner was fine. I kept the conversation basic. Work, weather, hobbies. My sister kept jumping in to fill the silences, nervous energy flying everywhere. Halfway through, he said something about his childhood. Mentioned going to some private school in Marin. I asked, "What was your last name again?" "Rowe," he said. "Damien Rowe." I didn't even blink. Just locked eyes with him. "Any relation to Roland Rowe?" He paused, just long enough to show he knew what that name meant. "He's my dad," he said carefully. I figured it'd come up eventually. I nodded. Didn't say another word about it. Not about the company. Not about business. Not about who I was. I passed him the breadbasket and changed the subject. After dinner, when he'd gone home, my sister pulled me aside. Her voice was quiet, a little uncertain. "You okay?" I stared at her for a second. Saw the same scared expression she used to have when we couldn't make rent. "Yeah," I said. "If you love him, I'm in your corner." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. And I meant it. I didn't care about his last name. I didn't care who his dad was. That had nothing to do with her. What mattered was how he treated her, not the suit he wore or the family he came from. I didn't trust him yet. Hell no. But I didn't need to. Not that night. What I needed was to make sure my sister was safe, happy, chosen. If Damien was the guy for that, fine. I'd watch, I'd measure, I'd wait. But I'd be right there. Just like always. A week later, I got the formal invite. Family dinner. Both sides meeting for the first time. Set at some country club that looked like it hadn't changed since the Reagan era. Dark wood, stiff waiters, and wine bottles that cost more than my first car. I showed up 10 minutes early just to clock the room. My sister waved from across the lounge. She looked nervous. Hair perfect. Smile too tight. Damien stood beside her, doing that politician thing, where he made eye contact with every person who passed. Then came Roland. Tan skin, crisp blazer, posture like a CEO even off the clock. He stepped in like he owned the building. Didn't look twice at the servers. Didn't glance at the bus boys. Zero awareness of anyone who wasn't useful. And when his eyes landed on me, I saw the calculation happen in real time. Oh, you're her brother. I assumed her father would be here. I looked him straight in the eye. He passed. Roland nodded like I had told him the soup was cold. No reaction, no pause, just moved on. So, he said, already scanning the room for someone shinier, what do you do? Corporate, I said flat. He nodded again. That lazy, dismissive nod people use when they've already decided you're forgettable. Then he looked over my shoulder and spotted someone with a Rolex and a title. And that was it. I was dismissed. Dinner was exactly what you'd expect. Long, polite, and completely fake. Roland ran the table like a boardroom. Asked Damien about his MBA. Asked my sister about her volunteer work. Like it was a hobby to kill time between brunches. He didn't ask me a single thing after that first question. Didn't need to. In his head, he already had me boxed and labeled. Back in my apartment that night, I called Felix. Put him on speaker while I took off my shoes. Met Roland tonight, I said. Oh boy, he chuckled. Did he give you the, and what do you do? Yup. And you hit him with corporate? Damn right. Felix laughed so hard he choked. You're gonna love how this ends. I smirked, but only a little. I didn't care if Roland liked me. That wasn't the point. I'd spent years being the guy no one noticed. The one in the background. The one that powerful men like Roland walked right past without a second thought. But this time was different. Because this time, I wasn't just watching. I was waiting. That's where we left it. And now here we were. The wedding was big. Like rented vineyard and live string quartet big. Every table had custom name cards, centerpieces the size of toddlers, and wine that probably needed a pronunciation guide. But all I cared about was walking her down that aisle. I stood with her at the top of it, arm in arm, while the music started. She looked up at me, eyes glassy, and whispered, "Thank you for everything." That was the real moment, not the dress, not the ceremony, just that. I squeezed her hand, and we walked. I didn't care who was watching, not Roland in his tailored suit, not the rows of people who still didn't know my name. I walked proud, like someone who'd earned that spot step by goddamn step. We made it to the altar. Damien was shaking slightly. I liked that. Meant he knew what he was walking into. I handed her over and took my seat in the back. I wasn't planning to speak. I'd already said what mattered to her. But about halfway through the reception, a staffer came up behind me and tapped my shoulder. "You're up next," she said quietly, holding a clipboard. I blinked. "What?" "The groom added you to the schedule. A surprise?" I looked over and caught Damien's eye. He gave me a small nod. I stood, adjusted my tie, and walked toward the mic. The clinking of glasses faded into silence as I stepped up. I didn't toast, didn't open with a joke. I just said, "I'm Lucian. I'm the bride's brother." I looked at her. She smiled, already tearing up again, and I breathed once, steady. "I wasn't going to speak tonight, but there's something I need to say. Not for attention, just for truth." The room quieted all the way down. When our dad died, I was 22. She was 17. There was no plan, no will, no backup, just debt and decisions. I buried him on a Monday and got a job by Friday. I let that land, then continued. I gave up a lot in those years, not because I was a hero, because nobody else was coming. I cooked every night, slept on the couch so she could have the bed, worked 3 jobs while finishing school, and I'd do it all again. There was a stillness in the room now, the kind that only shows up when people realize they've been watching the wrong story. She got herself here, make no mistake, but someone had to hold the line until she could run. That was me, and I'd do it again tomorrow. I caught Roland in the corner of my eye. He was finally looking at me, really looking. I also helped build a startup from scratch. No investors, no fanfare, just long nights and burned out laptops. Today that platform supports half the companies in this room. Some of you use it, some of you tried to buy it. I didn't name names. Didn't need to. We didn't build it to cash out. We built it to solve real problems. The quiet ones. The overlooked ones. Then I raised my glass. To my sister, who never gave up. And to Damien, who better mean every word he said today. Welcome to the family. I stepped down to silence. Then the applause came. Hesitant at first, then loud and honest. I was halfway back to my table when Roland stopped me near the bar. He stuck out his hand. "Lucian," he said, forced smile in place. I had no idea. I shook it, firm, polite, brief. "I know," I said. Then I walked past him and left him standing there. Let him sit with it. Roland didn't follow me after that handshake, but he watched me the rest of the night. I felt it every time I moved. His whole energy shifted, still polite, still smiling, but quieter, focused. You could see the math clicking behind his eyes. He knew he'd missed something big, knew he'd made a wrong read. I didn't rub it in. I wasn't there for revenge. I'd already won. Later, after the cake and the dancing and all the fake smiles in between, he found me again outside near the heaters. No crowd, no stage, just cool air and awkward silence. He stepped up like he was about to say something profound. I didn't give him the chance. "I wanted you to see me when you thought I was nobody," I said. That hit. He stood there for a second, then nodded like it stung, but he got it. He never mentioned the platform, never brought up the buyouts or the software he relied on to keep his empire running. But I know he realized. The guy he dismissed at that first dinner, same one making his systems run smoother than his own team could explain. We never sold to him. Not out of pride, not out of spite. We just saw what kind of man he was when he thought the room was his, when he thought the value was tied to the name tags, not the work behind the curtain. His company still licenses our software, still uses our backend for freight analysis and order routing. I see his name on the admin logs every couple weeks, and when his team runs into bugs or delays, he files a ticket like everyone else. And he gets the same customer service responses as any other client. No faster, no special treatment. Just the structure we built. Unbiased, efficient, cold if needed. Funny how that works. Damien never brought it up. Not once. He knew who I was after that night, sure. But he didn't try to play the connection. Didn't ask questions about his dad. Never tried to cash in that new awareness. And I respected that. More than that, I watched him. Closely. I watched how he talked to my sister. How he handled her bad days, her fears, her fire. I watched how he took her side even when Roland pushed too hard. Watched how he showed up early, stayed late, and didn't flinch when life got inconvenient. Over time, I stopped watching. Not because he earned my approval. I'm not in the business of handing that out. But he earned my trust, and that's harder to get. That trust stayed quiet, nothing dramatic, just steady. Now my sister's got peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't come with disclaimers or side effects. They bought a house 2 towns over. Yellow siding, wraparound porch, tiny vegetable garden in the back. It's not huge. It's not flashy. But it fits her. It feels safe. She teaches part-time at a local school, volunteers at a food bank on Thursdays, and sends me pictures of her tomato plants like they're children. She laughs now. And I mean really laughs. That loud, belly-deep kind that makes you stop and smile, even when you're having a garbage day. I hadn't heard that sound in years. Not since before Dad died. That smile, that's the return on everything I gave up. The long nights, the couch that wrecked my back, the jobs I hated, the sleep I missed, the relationships I never got to keep. All of it cashed out in her happiness. I go over on weekends sometimes, help fix stuff around the house, replace smoke detectors, tighten the cabinet doors. Damien offers, but he still holds the drill like it might explode. He's learning, though. We don't talk about money, or business, or software. That part of my life doesn't need to show up there. That space is hers. And honestly, I like being the quiet one again. I don't need to explain myself anymore. Don't need to flash credentials or list accomplishments. People still overlook me sometimes. That's fine. They always catch up later. Men like Roland, they only respect you once someone else tells them you're important. Once your name shows up in the right places, under the right light, attached to the right valuation. But by the time they respect you, it doesn't mean anything. Because real value, the kind that actually matters, shows up long before the applause. That's what they never understood. It's not in the Forbes list, not in the title, not in some puff piece article that gets shared on LinkedIn and forgotten the next day. It's in the weight you carry when no one's watching, the bills you pay in silence, the people you protect when there's nothing in it for you. That's where worth lives. Sometimes I get asked to speak at conferences, startup panels, university guest lectures. I say no most of the time, not because I'm ungrateful, but because I've already done the speaking that mattered. That wedding toast, that was enough. It said everything I needed to say. And now I build, I mentor, I write code, I fix broken things, sometimes servers, sometimes people. It's not sexy, but it works. And it's mine. When I pull into my sister's driveway now, there's no tension in my chest. No quiet panic about overdue bills or doctors we can't afford. Just birds in the trees and her laugh drifting from the kitchen window. Sometimes she meets me on the porch, coffee in hand, smiling like the world finally let her breathe. I pulled out of her driveway one night, late, headlights cutting through the quiet street. Porch light behind me, garden hose coiled neatly to the side. No noise, no tension, just peace. I didn't need applause. Never cared about being called sir by men like Roland. Guys like that only say sir when they think you can hurt them or help them. Either way, it's fake. What mattered was getting my sister through the fire, making sure she didn't live her life in panic mode, always waiting for the next bill to crush her, the next emergency to break her down. She's not that girl anymore, and I'm not the same guy who used to chase sleep and live on gas station coffee. I chose to stay invisible so she could be seen. That was the deal. That was the trade. I'd do it again without blinking. We didn't build a flashy startup. No billion-dollar valuations. No yachts. No viral press releases with buzzwords and fake grins. What we built was real. Real tools for real companies with real problems. And we did it the long way. No shortcuts. No burnouts. No fake it till you make it garbage. We learned what worked, fixed what didn't, and kept showing up. Roland's biggest mistake wasn't disrespecting me. That's just who he is. The mistake was believing respect has to be earned through titles, not proven through actions. He couldn't see value unless it came with a last name or a nameplate. He couldn't hear you unless someone else spoke your name first. If he had bothered to ask, if he had bothered to listen, maybe he would have learned something about what real value looks like. But I wasn't there to teach him. That's not my job. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm not even smug. I just remember. And then I move forward.